All right, so we're starting a little early today because we're not in a big need of a computer, so it's fine to have one out, take some notes and whatnot, but we're going to be talking about advice for making your first videos for social media. So the next training is going to be very specifically about how to get your phone out and actually use it to record video. So that's more of the technical training, the how-to. This is going to be a bigger picture training, just kind of talking about the ideas behind social video, why it's so important, and how to kind of get started with it. So what we're trying to do is start a little bit earlier so that we'll have more time for questions at the end. So that was one of the requests that we got. So we'll try to finish with about at least 10 minutes or so, and then you'll have a chance to ask your questions at that time. So before we start, I do want to always make sure we go over this disclaimer really quickly. So make sure that you check with your broker before you try any of this stuff. Every agency does have different rules about how to use social media. So please make sure that you are adhering to those rules. All right, so the first thing I want to cover today is to talk about what is happening on social media and why is video becoming so important. Now, this is a pretty big shift in the past, I would say, year to 18 months, that this has become a much bigger focus for a lot of small businesses. And the reason is that a lot of these internet platforms are starting to have an opportunity to go after an entirely different source of revenue. So when Google first got started, when Facebook launched, basically what they could do to make money was sell ads, and those ads were text-based or they were picture-based, right? So does everybody remember the day when the internet was banner ads? You had all like the flashing banners on the sides of websites and lots of pop-ups, right? There's not a lot of pop-ups anymore, thank God, because those are super annoying. So this is the reason that's happened, the reason that we don't have as many of those kinds of advertisements anymore, is that we're starting to move into an area where Google and Facebook and Netflix and Amazon and Apple are going to start making money by selling video ads, right? And they've already started doing this. Obviously, this has been around for a while. But what has happened, and the reason that that's a possibility for them, is that right now $80 billion plus are spent every single year on television ads, the traditional commercials. And what do most of us do when TV commercials come on nowadays?
Go to the bathroom.
Yeah, you skip it, right? So I heard go to the bathroom, that's a good one. You skip them, right? A lot of times we have this stuff pre-recorded. So if it's pre-recorded, you're not going to sit there and watch the commercials, right? And a lot of us, if we are watching commercials, the next thing we'll do is we'll pull our phone out, right? So a lot of people will have a tablet or a phone usually right next to them when they're watching television. And so the truth is that those traditional TV commercials have really decreased in effectiveness. So in the past 5 to 10 years, those have gone from being the gold standard, and if you think about it, TV advertising, especially for big companies, really was the gold standard for many decades. And now they've become a lot less effective because we're just not consuming them the way we used to, right? So what that means is that at $80 billion that the big companies, Coca-Cola and Nike, those types of companies are spending on TV ads, that money is shifting to these companies, right? So all the big media companies, all the big TV stations, a lot of them are really struggling. I'm sure some of you have heard about, like ESPN in particular has lost millions of subscribers just in the past few years. And so all that money that they were spending on ads is actually going to start coming to Facebook and Google. Hopefully not Netflix, because Netflix doesn't sell ads, but they will always have that opportunity if they choose to. And then obviously Amazon as well. Amazon's doing their own video. So what these companies are starting to do is they're starting to try to become the next TV platform, right? So we all know, obviously, Google owns YouTube, and you've probably heard of YouTube Red. You can subscribe, and you can get TV channels through YouTube now. Facebook has something called Facebook Watch, which is a place where you can watch shows that Facebook actually develops themselves. So they have all kinds of content on there. Some of them are shows that actually Facebook's paying to develop, right? So they're making their own TV shows now. And what they're hoping to do is over the next couple years, they're going to suck that $80 billion that's coming out of traditional TV, and they're going to start showing those ads instead, right? So get ready for, there are lots of commercials on Facebook here in the next couple years. So what does that have to do with small business? Why are we looking at this right now? The number one reason I would say that this is important to keep an eye on is that right now, advertising on these two top platforms in particular, Facebook and then YouTube through Google, are very affordable compared to what they're going to be in 2 to 5 years, right? What's going to happen when that $80 billion shifts over onto these platforms, there's not more ad space. Facebook has already maximized the number of ads they're going to put in our newsfeed when we're using Facebook. So they're not going to be able to just put more ads out there. What's going to happen is the price of those ads has to go up, right? So anybody that took economics, you understand supply and demand, right? And if the supply stays the same and the demand goes up, the price is going to go up. So it's simple economics here. So in the next couple years, you're going to see a tripling, if not 10x times the cost on these platforms. And that's why for a lot of small businesses, the next couple years is kind of the golden age. If you start using these ads, if you start making video and putting it out, especially on Facebook and YouTube, you're going to do it affordably, you're going to have time to get good at it, and then by the time those big companies are spending their money, you're already going to be in a position to make money from this stuff, and you'll be prepared for those costs to go up, right? The people that don't start doing this stuff in the next couple years, they're kind of going to miss the window of opportunity, and if they do get started 2-3 years from now, they're going to spend 5 times as much just trying to learn, right? So I would think of the next 6 months as kind of your opportunity to start trying these things for the first time and get good at them so you can get out ahead of that curve. And then when those things do change and when all of a sudden your ad is running right next to a Coca-Cola ad, for instance, yours is still going to look good and it's still going to perform well, okay? So a lot of the training we're going to be doing over the next few months is going to be focused on getting started, getting comfortable on camera, coming up with ideas for compelling video content, and then using it in advertisements. So some of the later trainings are actually going to be focused on the ads platform and how to set up your own advertisements, all right? So who in here has heard of Gary Vaynerchuk? I always like to do a little survey there. So we got at least a few. That's usually at least 20% of people or so have heard of him. So Gary V, if you haven't heard of him yet, if you are interested in marketing or advertising at all, you probably will hear about him in the next year or two. He is kind of quickly becoming the most famous person in advertising, and he's basically done that very intentionally. So Gary's story, he's an immigrant. His father opened a liquor business, a wine store, in the New York City area about 30 years ago. And in 2000, I think it was 4, Gary took over the marketing for his dad's business. So he had done a few other jobs in the past. He had some marketing experience, but he was also experimenting with a lot of new stuff. And the 2 things that he really dominated were email marketing. So this was back in the kind of heyday of email marketing when it was still kind of getting started. He did a lot of business that way. And he also got really big on YouTube. So if you go way, way back to 2004, I think that was even before Google had bought YouTube, he was one of the kind of initial or original stars on YouTube, right? So he was out there doing this video stuff, a full decade before most other people even tried it. He grew his father's business from $3 million the first year he started to about 3 or 4 years later, they were doing $60 million a year, right? So the stuff that he did in that couple year span was obviously extremely impactful. And then he turned that into, he developed a following, and now he has multiple millions of followers on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, like 5 or 6 different platforms. So he's basically the most famous person in the business world in a lot of ways, outside of Elon Musk and those types, right? So Gary is a total expert at social media, and a lot of what he says is very predictive. He kind of sees things coming at least 5+ years ahead of time. So if you're curious what he sees 5 years from now, he's starting to talk a lot about sound as opposed to video. So things like podcast, Amazon Alexa, people are starting to get used to asking questions to their devices. So you can imagine if you're the real estate agent who has a bunch of answers pre-recorded and those can be played, that's going to be a big opportunity. We're not talking about that stuff yet because it's still a few years out. But one of the big things he talks a lot about is podcasting. So getting into podcasting over the next couple years might be a strategic play. And a lot of the videos and stuff you make, you can record the audio and kind of use that as a podcast. So that's what he sees kind of further down the road. But right now, what he does and what I think we should all be imitating is he puts out a constant stream of video content on all those platforms I mentioned, right? So he actually has a person that follows him around with a camera all day. So that's probably, I don't know if any of you need to get to that extent quite off the bat, right? But he actually has somebody following with a camera all day long, except for when he's with his family. So you never see his family. He's totally in control of what you do and don't see. And he records everything he does in business. So if he's walking down the street and a stranger interrupts him and says, "Oh, hey, Gary, it's so nice to meet you," and they have a question, and he'll give him a piece of advice for 30 seconds, that's on camera, and he puts that out on social media, and people love that stuff. They love the sense that they're like kind of getting the behind the scenes. So he probably produces 30 videos, every single week, if not every single day. So he's doing it very extremely. Yeah.
Kieran Ray is also really good.
Kerwin Ray? Yeah. So he's actually a follower of of Gary. So yeah, I saw him probably about 6 months ago, and he's a great example. So if you're looking for somebody that's done all of this in the past year, I believe his name's Kerwin Ray, and he's an Australian guy. He's a big social media mogul type, marketing guy. And he basically took everything Gary Vee does and just copied it and did it himself. So he also has somebody who follows. There's going to be a lot of people following them with cameras, as I have today. Right? Here's my little example of it. This is Vanessa, by the way. She's my business partner.
Hi,
so
everyone.
she was kind enough to join us and do some video. And since we're talking about video today, that's a quick side note, is one of the best types of content you can make is just record yourself anytime you do some sort of public speaking. Even if it's just you in front of a couple of your fellow office mates and you're doing a little training or having a small discussion, whenever someone sees a video where they see other people watching you talk, they're a lot more excited to see what you had to say, right? Because it's called social proof. If I see that, hey, a couple other people are watching that guy, well, there must be a reason. I want to hear what they have to say. So that's, I've got a camera back there. I set up a second one over here today, and then she's kind of doing some of this extra B-roll for us. So you don't need to have 3 cameras, obviously. 1 is plenty. But this is the kind of thing the first time I ever did this, I spoke at the St. Louis County Library in a business series, and I had a camera way in the back like that. It's kind of grainy. It's not the best picture, but I cut 5 or 6 1-minute clips out of that, and that's actually still some of the best performing content that we've ever put out there. So that was kind of an interesting little side note. But getting back to Gary Vee, this is one of his more popular quotes, and basically he likes to make the point that every business is now its own media company. So what does that mean? So who here can give us kind of a definition of media? What does media mean to you? No idea.
Social networking.
Okay, social networking, advertising, those are both examples of media. What else would be considered media?
Just reaching out to a great mass of people at one time.
Yeah, so the idea of media is broadcasting, right? So it's basically the idea that you can put out some kind of messaging to more than one person, right? So media is things like radio, television, blogging, newspapers. Those are all media, or types of media. The reason that he says that we are all now our own media company is that putting that stuff out there has gotten easier than it ever was before, right? So when blogging came out, that was a big deal because now we could all kind of write our own newspaper. When podcasting became a bigger thing in the past couple of years, it's the same as radio, right? It's something that's actually more like radio on demand because I can download it and listen to it whenever I want. And the cost to make those things is basically zero now, right? If I take my phone out of my pocket and put it on a tripod there and record myself for an hour, maybe a penny or 2 of energy was used there, right? That doesn't really cost me anything. I didn't have to hire somebody. I didn't have to rent a fancy camera. And the camera in your phone now is pretty darn good. I mean, I just got a new S9. It's the new Galaxy phone. And to be honest, I'd have to spend probably $500 or $600 to get a camera, an independent, it's a camera on its own that's anywhere near as good as the one in my phone, okay? So the truth is, those are good enough to record almost anything you want to do, and that's what we're going to be focused on talking about today. So everything that we're talking about doing, you can do with just your cell phone, right? So you don't have to feel like you need to go invest in a whole bunch of equipment.
Are you going to go into that, the specific phones that you think are better than others?
So the next training, we're going to be talking about the how-to, which is all going to be about getting the actual phone out and what buttons to press and what apps to use and things like that, and we'll go over that then. I will tell you right now that any phone made in the past 3 years or so is probably plenty good, as long as it records video. I mean, really, as long as it records video. If you think about social media, you think about Facebook, these do not have to be super high definition, right? I mean, a lot of cameras, like the camera right here, is DSLR, will record in 4K. You can't even put 4K on Facebook. The highest resolution you can do is 1080p. So that's only half the size, half the number of pixels, and you don't even need that high of a level of definition. So the truth is, simple cameras are fine, but any phone in the past 3 years or so is probably really good. The flagship phones, the iPhone 10, the Galaxy S9, and the S8, which had a very similar camera, and the Google Pixel phones all have very nice cameras in them. So those are all good options. So back to this point here, basically this is just Gary Vee saying that because it does not cost anything to put your content out there, to make content yourself, there's no excuse not to do it, and that means that if your competitors are doing it, you should probably be doing it too. And the reason for that is that you're able now to get the attention of your ideal customers without paying a middleman in a lot of ways, right? So what that means is that 20 years ago, if I wanted people to see a video ad of me, I would have to pay some television company to put a commercial on during one of their more popular shows. Hopefully people would pay attention to it. I'd have to spend a bunch of money on a production. You had to go into some studio somewhere, big lights, big cameras, all kinds of stuff. And that was generally going to cost, at a minimum, probably $5,000. In a lot of cases, you're going to spend over $10,000 to go through all of that stuff. Now, you can just take your phone out, record something, and pay Facebook a couple bucks to promote it to somebody. You don't even have to pay them. You can just post it, and a couple dozen, if not a couple hundred people will see it for free, right? So we don't need to pay that middleman. We don't need to have tons of equipment. And so we can go out and we can grab people's attention on our own. So what that means is that we're going to be talking through these trainings about how can you develop a strategy to start making content. And content can be video, and that's the one we focus on a lot, but it can also be audio, and it can be written word. So anything you would type out or write, it can be something you record, audibly, or it could be video, right? So those are really the three main kinds of content. So all of those apply. We focus on video because it's the most engaging. If somebody watches a video of you, they're going to remember that more than they would some audio, and even more than they would some written words. So that's why we focus there. So everybody should be out there doing this stuff. The barriers are gone. It's not hard to write a blog post. It's not hard to make a video. It's just now it's a competition to see who can be the most interesting, right? So it's all about who can entertain people, who can get them to laugh, who can educate them, and you don't have to do all those things. So if you're not a funny person, then don't worry, you don't have to make people laugh in your videos, right? But if you are a comedian and you like to crack people up, then that should be something that you try to do. That should be something you focus on. So we will get into that a little bit about how to use your personality to promote yourself. But the idea here is you got to be trying stuff. So the next couple years is going to be a big race of people just trying interesting things, and I've even in the past couple months seen it happen already. One category of people I've noticed that are really experimenting a lot is actually mortgage bankers. So a lot of mortgage bankers, since they compete with each other to get business from real estate agents, a lot of them are actually taking bigger chances with this video stuff. So there's several of them that have set up a studio in their office, and they bring in their different referral partners, and they'll do little interview shows with them, and they're trying some cool stuff there. So just kind of keep an eye out on what people are doing. And try some of the stuff yourself. So if you have some ideas, if a series of articles you want to write, a series of videos you want to do, just go ahead and take your phone out and just start working on it, right? Because it is kind of a race that we're getting into. So I want to talk, specifically about video today, and I want to sell you a little bit on why video right now, especially on Facebook, is so powerful. So the first thing I want to ask you is, who here feels like their average hour in a given day is worth less than $3? So who here would work for less than $3? Okay, good. Nobody feels like they're almost worthless. That's good, right? So your time is worth more than $3, and I'm not going to make you tell me exactly what you think it's worth, right? But it's probably worth a lot more than $3. So the way I look at advertising on Facebook is if I can get someone to pay attention to my video and watch me speak and start to follow me and have an interest in me, if I can spend less than what their average hour is worth to get them to spend that time, that's probably worth it, right? And it's probably honestly worth paying more than what their typical hour is worth, right? So if I can get their time for under $3 an hour, that's a no-brainer, and I'll do that as long as I possibly can. So what I did is I made this video here, and this video I shot it with my cell phone. I did not use any fancy equipment other than that I did have a lapel microphone, which cost me about $15. Just helps you get a little bit better sound. So I clipped this on my shirt, and I plugged it into my phone, and I did two things. So I was on 2 trips this past around Christmas. First, we were down in Florida for a week with my girlfriend and her family. So I was at the beach, and so I did a little walk and talk video where you hold the camera up like this and just kind of talk to the camera. And then the next week, I was in Colorado with my family on a ski trip. So I was snowboarding. There's a lot of people there. I don't recommend trying to film yourself while snowboarding, especially if you're not very good at snowboarding, which is me. So this clip was about 10 seconds. It was very short. I found a spot which was like a beginner's section, and it looked like I was moving fast, but I was not moving very fast. And I finished the video. So what the video ended up being was me on the beach saying, hey, here's an example of something you can do. And I said, you can do this on a beach, and then I cut to the part where I was on the snowboard. I said, or you can do it when you're snowboarding down a mountain, right? So it was a cool video. It was about 30 seconds long. It was pretty simple. And I paid to promote this to real estate agents. So I would estimate that a real estate agent's time is worth, way more than $3 an hour. It's probably $50 to $100+ an hour, especially some of the top performing agents. And so what I did is I targeted them, and we spent $27.79 by the time I took the snapshot here. Okay, so if you look at this, and I don't know if you can see the laser pointer or not, but if you look at it right here, it says 786 minutes viewed. And so that's the total amount of time. If you take all the people that watched the video and you take how much time they watched it and you add it all up, it was 786 minutes. So if you do the math on it, it ended up being 13.1 hours, and it was only $2.12 per hour of time that people watched those videos. And I had targeted this at real estate agents, right? So that's another really cool feature of Facebook, is you can be really specific about who you show something to. And so I targeted it at real estate agents, so I know that's who was watching it. And so to get that much of their time focused on me talking about what I do for a living, and even if it's not about what I do for a living, it's still focused on me and remembering who I am and learning about me, right? I got all of that time for only $27.79. So to me, this is where the golden opportunity is. Even if I paid $20 an hour, that's still a really good return on my investment. So a lot of people are going to tell you, when you're looking at advertising, you want to think about ROI. And I'm not here to say that that's not true. You should definitely look at ROI. But I think that ROI is, in a lot of ways, a very flawed metric because it's too broad. It does not give you a good thing to measure right up front. Because if I ran this, I didn't sell anything with this video. I just kind of showed people who I was and started to build a following with them. But this was a really good return on my money and time invested, but I didn't have actual income from it yet, right? So so try not to always focus on ROI. So these are some other metrics you can use. So like the amount of money you're spending per hour of someone's time, in my opinion, is a very useful metric that comes into play way before you would know your ROI, right? So you can look at this and say, well, hey, right now it's only $2 an hour. If I keep running this ad, and after a couple weeks that number gets into $10 or $15 or $20 an hour, then I can say, okay, now it's time to turn that ad off. It's not working as well anymore, okay? So that's kind of how that metric works. So I want to give you another example. This is a client of ours we did a 3-video package with, which we call our social media jumpstart. And they're really simple videos. It's about a minute-long video. And what he talked about here were 5 tips, like really simple, small tips you can do when you're getting your house ready to sell, right? So 5 home improvement tips. He talked on each one for maybe 10 seconds, right? So he's not being super elaborative. He mentioned the tip, and then actually just the behind the scenes aspect of this, we filmed each tip individually, right? So that's another thing people forget about, is that you can do a lot of editing to your video. So don't feel like you have to read the entire script all in one sitting. So we had him talk about one tip, it was about 2 sentences, and then we stopped, right? And then we had to talk about the next tip, and then we added some graphics and some different kind of transitions and whatnot to make it look really good. So we put this video out, and these stats that I'm about to read here, this is all organic, all right? So what that means is that we did not spend any money to promote this video. So what we did is we posted it on his business page first, and then he clicked on the share button and he shared that video from his business page to his personal page. And as a result of that, he ended up getting 54 total comments. So it's 54 different engagements with the post where people are commenting, and comments are very valuable. That's one of the things Facebook looks at to decide if it should show the post to somebody else. He got 143 likes and engagements. And when I say engagements, that means the other options like hearts and the funny one and all that kind of stuff. Most of them were likes, but that's the total number he got. He had 575 minutes viewed, right? So that's almost 10 hours of view time. We had him in a studio for 1 hour to make 3 of these videos, right? So this was about 20 minutes of his time, and then a little bit of planning, and obviously he brought a couple different outfits in, so he probably had to pick his outfits out that morning, right? So maybe that took 5 minutes. He's a guy, so it probably took 1 minute, let's be honest, right? And so he came in, we did this as 10 hours of view time. So that, to me, and this is without spending money to promote this stuff, right? So now he can take this video, has all these likes on it, and use it as an ad and show it to a bunch of people and spend that $2 or $3 an hour for as many more hours of this time as he wants. 10 hours for 20, 30 minutes invested is an enormous return on your time. So that's where I think people don't understand the power of video sometimes. Video in a lot of ways is like public speaking, right? You're going to get, for the 1 hour you put in, every single person that's there, you multiply that hour, right? So if you have 20 people watch you speak, that's 20 hours of time that people have consumed your information versus only 1 hour of your time put in. There's obviously some preparation, but you can start to see how impactful the stuff can get, right? Because he's already got 10 hours of view time. That's all from his sphere of influence. So these are people that, he in a lot of cases has not talked to in maybe even months, and they saw him for a minute. Now, a minute on its own doesn't seem like a lot, but obviously if you continue doing this stuff, if somebody in your sphere sees you every single week for a couple minutes, you're definitely way up in their head versus any of the other real estate agents they know, right? So that's where this stuff gets really powerful, and that's why I'm telling people, like, right now is the golden age. Like, start as soon as you can. If you've been dragging your feet getting started with video, like, these are the kind of numbers you're going to see now. A couple years from now, these numbers are going to be a lot harder to get, right? So that's why this is such a big opportunity at the moment. So talking a little bit more about the specifics of some stats around this, some national stats. So one stat that goes around a lot, I think this comes from Cisco, if I'm not mistaken, is that by 2021, 82% of all consumer internet traffic will be related to video. So what that basically means is over 4/5 of all of what we do online by 2021 is going to be tied to video. And some of that's going to be virtual reality video, right? So there's whole other frontiers we can even get into. Nearly 2/3 of consumers prefer video under 60 seconds. So that's a really big one to remember. Now, there is a catch when I say that. That does not mean you should only ever make videos under 60 seconds. What it does mean is that if I've never seen anything from you before, if you're a total stranger, I do not want to watch you for 10 minutes. Okay, I don't have any reason to want to watch a 10-minute video of you talking or of anything, right? If I know you and I've already kind of developed an interest in what you do and want to hear more from you, then longer videos can be very impactful. So the way to think about that particular point is when you're making content and you're putting something out there in front of people for the first time, keep it short. And when you make longer things, try to make sure that you're putting that in front of people who have already seen you a few times, right? The longer stuff is going to do better when there's a little bit of buy-in already. The other reason that under 60 seconds is so crucial is that Instagram only lets you post videos up to 60 seconds. So if you make a video longer than 60, you cannot post it to Instagram. It's not the end of the world because Facebook has plenty of people, but if you are interested in staying in front of the millennial and younger audience, they're on Instagram. They are also on Facebook in a lot of cases, but they're more commonly, you're going to find them more on Instagram, right? So that's a good reason to keep that in mind. Another stat is that using the word video, so just saying the word video in the subject line of an email actually increases your open rates by 19% and increases the click-through rates by 65%. Right? Those are, I mean, if you do email marketing at all, like, those are some pretty big, easy bonuses just from using the word video. Now, don't use the word video and then not have a video to share with them, right? Because they're not going to appreciate that. There are certain services you can use to put the video in the email, but you can also link to the video. It doesn't have to be in the email. So if you have it on Facebook or YouTube and you provide a link to it, that works as well. And then this last point, which just really kind of drives us all home, is that social video generates 1,200% more shares than text and images combined. So you'll see that a lot on Facebook nowadays. If somebody is sharing something, if they're clicking that share button, a lot of times it's going to be a video. And video is just that much more engaging, right? So that's a good one to try to remember here. So next thing I want to do is I want to get into some specific types of video. And this is just the tip of the iceberg. This is to get you started. This is not meant to be an exhaustive list, so please don't look at this and think, oh, I can think of a bunch of other kinds of video. Hopefully you can, right? But these are just a few things to get you started. So one of the first ones that, it's not necessarily the first video I would show someone, but it is the first one a lot of people want to make, and it's probably because it's the most straightforward, is the company introduction video. So this is where you get on camera and you talk about your team, the mission of your business, the story of how you got started. That generally is the one that people are most comfortable making, and that's the reason to make it first. Not necessarily the one I would post on Facebook first, but it is a good one to start with. Next one, and this is getting into the content what I would recommend posting first, are educational videos. So if you think back, 5 to 10 years when blogging, so does anybody remember when blogging was like the thing to do and you better start a blog or else you're going to miss out, right? So when that happened, this was the kind of content that they were really recommending you write. Was the, hey, write a blog post about 5 things you should do to get your home ready to list, right? And a whole bunch of real estate agents wrote those articles. And at first they were really effective, and then as more people wrote the same article over and over again, they got less and less effective, right? To the point now where like those are a dime a dozen. That article is on every single person's website, and it doesn't do you a lot of good to write it again, right? So these educational videos, things talking about tips for getting your home ready to buy or sell, seller or buyer guide type of videos, those still work really well because a lot of people are not doing them yet. Once you see a lot of other agents do them, they will not perform as well. And that's a marketing rule in general. As soon as everybody starts doing something in marketing, it stops working. Because if everybody's doing it, it's just a lot of noise and it's not as effective, right? Now you can go a little further, and I would say that if you do things like local news, that's a very timely type of video. So it's going to have a lot of impact the first couple days after it comes out, but it's not really reusable because it's a time-oriented thing. And then just general tips and tricks, trends, things like that. Those can make very good educational videos. Number 3, and this is one that is really just a habit you have to start forming, that's testimonial videos. So anytime you close a deal, you make sure to have that client talk about the process. And the best thing to do is to basically just do it right at the closing table. I see these all the time, and you can tell that a lot of the people on camera were not told that they were going to be on camera. And so they're like, oh, it was great. I was so happy to work with, and it's like, they're happy, but they're like not happy about the camera, right? So it kind of dampens the energy. So just try to tell people like, hey, it's no big deal. It's not a lot of pressure. If it doesn't turn out well, I won't even use it. But just maybe wear a decent shirt because you're going to be on camera, right? I'm going to ask you just to say 1 or 2 things about how the process was. And then maybe even give them the questions ahead of time. Just by giving them a little bit of preparation, they're going to come, they'll probably wear, if it's a woman, they'll wear makeup, and if it's a guy, he might comb his hair at least, So you'll have people that look a little bit nicer on camera, they're going to feel more comfortable, and as a result, you're going to have a much nicer video. But if you do that, right when they close, right when they're most excited, that's usually going to be the best version of it. And ask them questions. Don't just say, oh, what was it like? Because they're not going to give you the best answer. Be really specific about what you want. So ask them things like, if there was a challenge you overcame, ask them to mention that challenge and how you helped them overcome it. The more of a story that they tell, the better that video will be, right? So those can be a few minutes long. They don't have to adhere to that 1-minute rule. But those are very, very powerful. And I would say just building up a bank of testimonial videos is a great thing to do because they're pretty much good forever. I mean, you can show a testimonial video 2 years from now, from today, and it's still going to have an impact on people. So that to me is probably one of the easiest wins. Is there are categories of people on Facebook you can target with ads who are most likely to move. It's actually a category called likely to move in the ads manager. And these are people Facebook is guessing or are on the verge of buying or selling a house because they're looking at Zillow, they're clicking on the right things, and they're kind of tracking that. If you just put a bunch of testimonial videos in front of those people, you will pick up clients. Like not a lot of people are doing it yet, so again, first mover advantage. So definitely get testimonial videos. And the last one would be promotional videos. And that's when you're getting really braggadocious about yourself. So that's when you're telling you're doing an open house video, touring an open house, something like that. You might be doing a success story, so talking about a very specific issue you helped a client with. Sometimes our customers are not great on camera, so we'll want to tell that story for them. But those are very good videos, but you can only use them sparingly. So if you were here last month, or I guess it was a couple weeks ago, you probably heard us talking about the 5-to-1 rule. You want to post 5 non-business related posts or non-promotional posts for every 1 promotional post you put up. So if you do those, just make sure you're not posting a whole bunch in a row because that can feel a little bit salesy to people. All right, so I did want to try to show you a couple examples of this. We've been having a little bit of an internet connectivity issue. So I'm going to read the description first, and then I'll see if Rob's video will work. So the first category, one of the ones I talked about, was educational videos. So a couple kind of tips on here is be short on camera. Be very, very specific and actionable, right? So whatever amount of words you would normally use to describe one of your tips, cut it like in thirds, right? And you want to have like as few words as possible. So you'll see in this video, it ends up giving 3 tips, and I think it's only about maybe under 80 seconds long. Another piece of advice is include props when it's possible. Anything you can get on camera and show people, it's just more interesting to look at. a lot of what keeps people watching video is how interesting visually is the video. So that's why things like graphics and interesting backgrounds can be so helpful. But props also go a long way. So if we can get this to play later, you'll see how he was using a prop in his video. And then a couple ideas just about what are some topics you could use for educational videos. Current market trends, so talking about what's going on with the shortage of houses in the area right now, that's a good topic. Explaining the process of real estate. So I think a lot of, especially first-time home buyers, they just don't know what they're getting into. They don't know what all the different steps are. They never heard the word title before, so I don't even know what that means. So explaining to them what those things are is a great way to introduce yourself to them. A neighborhood overview. So that's a really powerful video. If you can be the first person to make a video about a specific neighborhood or subdivision, you put that on YouTube. When people are searching for that neighborhood, your video is going to show up. When they search Google for that neighborhood, your video will also show up because Google owns YouTube, so they put all their YouTube videos in those search results. An interview with a local principal of a school or a local restaurant owner. That's one of the kind of current low-hanging fruit opportunities. If you go in and you ask, hey, I want to interview the principal of the high school, or I want to interview the owner of a really popular restaurant, right now, a lot of them will say yes. Once a bunch of you start asking them, they're going to start saying no, because it's going to get annoying. That's probably still a couple years from now, but it is going to happen, right? Somebody's going to do it, so as soon as you can, the better. Yep.
I actually was in a restaurant one time, I can't remember which one it was, and I just videoed, we had a great meal here and you should come back here.
Mm-hmm.
And I posted it and I put it on their Facebook and, or tagged them.
Mm-hmm.
And then they helped promote it, and everybody that went to their restaurant, would
Exactly.
see that too. So and I wasn't promoting myself, but yet there I was,
But you're still they're then kind of promoting you, right? Yeah, that's
the area wherever if you want to promote an area too.
Yeah, that's a great example. Yeah. Yep. I mean, the restaurants are going to help put it out there for you as well, right? So that definitely goes a long way. Yeah.
I'm just curious if you've seen somebody on explaining the real estate process. Obviously, that's going to be a pretty long video. How do you break?
Yeah,
it down?
and I should elaborate there. A piece of the process, right? Because you could probably spend 10 hours on camera explaining the whole thing, right? So pick the best thing to do is basically think about what are the sticking points for your customers. So like, what are points in the process that they've struggled with or they've had questions, and then just answer one of those questions at a time per video, right? So if you have somebody that something like down payment assistance on a mortgage, right? Like people don't know, how do I qualify and what does that mean? So that's probably could be a 5 or 10 minute video, right? So, and again, you don't have to feel like everything needs to be under a minute. If it's something that takes longer to explain, please go ahead and make a longer video. But yeah, you go ahead and break it down. And social media is all about like bite-sized packages. So even taking that question and making it into a 3-part video series and making each video 1 minute long, like you might want to consider that, right? So let's see if this will work.
You can even use it as bait to get them onto to follow you on other social media platforms. So you can post the first video in the series of 3 on Facebook, and then
3
have
things
over to
you can
Instagram
do to save money
see the
on
second
energy
part.
costs.
Yeah.
Hey guys, Rob Biederman here with Worth Clark Realty, and I'm here today to help you reduce your heating costs. I'm not going to tell you to turn down your thermostat or to take shorter showers, because nobody wants to do that when it's freezing cold outside. What I am going to do is give you a few cheap tips to reduce your heating costs. First of all, get some of these guys. These are a couple bucks at your local hardware store. You fit these over your electrical outlet or your light switch and reduce drafts from coming in and out, so you're not losing all the heat that you paid for right off the electrical outlets or switches. Next thing you can do is lock your windows and doors. Ever notice when you lock your window, it squeezes together a little bit tighter? Well, that creates a seal that prevents that warm air that you paid for from leaking out the window. Same thing with doors. Last thing you can do is just to shut off the vents in rooms you're not using. Why heat a room that you're not going to be in? Those are a few easy, cheap tips you can use to reduce your heating costs this winter. Thanks for watching.
So that's an example of like a little bit of an educational video you can do. So moving on to testimonials. So a testimonial video is obviously very, very powerful, and I mean it's probably self-explanatory why, but you got to think about the psychology of this. When you show this video, even though it's an ad for you, it's still another person advocating for you, right? And that's what's really cool about video in particular is I can see the person, I know it's them, right? You couldn't really do this with the written word. Like if you wrote a blog post and you include a quote from a client, like, yeah, that's cool. But like people made a lot of those up, to be honest, right? So they kind of lost a little bit of credibility over the years. This is one where you can, until we can, artificially simulate someone, which we're probably not far from, but until that happens, like, you can't fake this, right? So this is a real person, they're talking about you. So testimonials are very powerful, especially as advertisements. So you could probably run a couple videos in series that are just people saying great things about you, clients of yours, and you'll find customers that way. It is kind of that straightforward, and actually we're doing that for a customer right now, and it's working even better than I thought it would. So just a couple points about testimonials here is you want to make sure that you're focusing on the benefits of working with you. So this is, you have some control over what the person says based on the questions that you ask them. So make sure that the questions you ask them are about how you made the process better and what were the benefits, right? So in sales and marketing, you often talk about features versus benefits, right? So, the feature is that you have a real estate agent. The benefit is that the process is a lot less stressful, right? So talking about things like how much stress you saved that person, how easy you made the process, how smooth it all was, that kind of stuff is much more impressive than talking about features. Talking about what challenges you help them overcome, and then why did they choose you? Those are another couple questions that can go a long way. So I'll see if we can show you an example of a testimonial video. And this video actually is not for a real estate agent. This is a person doing a testimonial for an event that we help with some marketing. So it is a little bit different, but you'll still get an idea for how these work.
I'm a realtor, been a realtor for almost 20 years.
Yeah, unless you
Remax referred. I got invited here by another friend I met, and it's been an awesome experience. I mean, truly awesome experience. The excitement, the level of
All right, well, I'm going to stop this because this is annoying. But anyway, that was a testimonial for the Mastermind events, which I'm sure some of you have probably been to. They're pretty big events. But the idea there is just to get somebody in, especially one of the reasons that I want to show that video is you can see a lot of it is also about context. And so that's why I say get the video at the closing table, because when they're the most excited, they're going to make the best video. So we shot those at the event, right? So this was right after the event ended. We asked people to come over. We had all the commotion in the back, so you could see all the people, so it made the event look really fun. And then all the people we asked for testimonials from were very excited, right? They were in a very good mood, and so the testimonial videos ended up, they're ranting and raving about how amazing this event is. If we had asked them to do that a week later, they would have still said good things, but they wouldn't have had the same energy behind it. And then I wanted to also show you an example, or talk a little bit about promotional video. I don't know if we'll be able to show the example or not, but promotional video, you want to be careful about, people can get long-winded when they talk about themselves, right? So it's very easy to just kind of blabber on and on about how great you are. And the truth is that the more you do that, the less people tend to like you, right? So let's maybe avoid, doing these for too long. So you want to keep them short. I would say that these are the kind of thing where this is kind of thinking like commercial, like TV commercial type of stuff, right? So stuff where you're really getting to the point, you're trying to make that sale, you're trying to get the person interested in working with you. So under 60, even under 30 seconds is probably a good idea. This one is, again, a promotional video for an event. A lot of what we do is we work with event promotion. That's a big thing that works really well through video. So if I can get it to play, you'll instantly recognize the event space, which I think would be an interesting thing to see. So making sure, again, that the background makes sense. So if you are shooting this in an office, a lot of people, you just have a blank wall behind that person. So think a little bit about that. Could you get them to maybe stand out in the office where there's a little bit more going on? Can you make sure that there's maybe your company logo behind them, or there's something in the background? Just a slightly different background can go a long way to keeping people interested. You want to make sure that you highlight any of the basic information. So an example for all of you would be obviously promoting an open house. So make sure you say when it is and where it is, and be really specific. Say those things multiple times. And one of the last things I want to point out here is ask for whatever you're requesting multiple times, right? So if you want them to click a certain button, you probably want to say that button at least twice. You might even want to point to where that button is going to be. So if you're making a video and you want them to hit the send message button, that's always going to be below them on kind of down in this corner, right? So if you imagine a square around me, that button is right down here. So if you point to it, or you can add an arrow in the video when you're editing it, that'll also help a lot, because you want to be really clear about what you want that person to do, and never give them more than one call to action. All right. So when people say like text or call me, they're actually reducing the chance of either of those things happening. All right. So what you might think is that, hey, if I give people 5 different ways to contact me, then they don't have any excuse, they'll contact me. But the reality is, the more choices we have, that's a decision now I have to make, right? Now not only do I have to decide if I want to contact you, I have to decide how I'm going to contact you. So you just made it harder for me to get in touch with you, right? So focus on one call to action. So if it's come to the event, the call to action is to RSVP, and you tell them where to do that, and you hammer that home. If you want them to call you, just tell them to call you, right? Do not tell them to text you or to email or do anything else. Let me see if we can play a little bit of this example. I just kind of want you to see the background if we can.
Hi, I'm Tammy Short. I'm the president for the St. Louis chapter of Women's Council of Realtors.
All right, so I'm going to stop it because this is obviously really
We are so
glitchy, but who recognizes the background? It's the Science Center, right? The mechanical T-Rex in the Science Center. So this was a great example of like the background being really crucial. And technically, if you have a green screen, you could probably do this without having to go there. We did actually go film this there because we don't have a recording of the T-Rex that we could use. But this is the kind of thing where it might be a little bit uncomfortable to be on scene for shooting a video. But if you are, it can get a lot more people to show up. So this event actually ended up being, I think, their highest attended event in like a couple years. And a big part of it was because people instantly recognize that. It kind of brings you back to your childhood. It's almost always a positive memory, unless you were scared of that thing, in which case maybe it's not a positive memory, right? But it gets people interested, and we had over 50 people that RSVP'd to that event from this video, right? So that was a pretty, and there was about 80 people that attended, so over half of the RSVPs actually ended up coming from this. So that's the idea for a promotional video. So obviously, if you can entertain people in some way, if the background is interesting, you can be more promotional because there's already a reason to watch the video. Yeah.
Do you have to be careful if you're doing that, if there's people in the background?
You do, and I would say consult a lawyer for the specifics there. I mean, Missouri is a state where you only need consent of one person for recording to happen, right? So technically, as long as you're not like hiding this camera, I believe that is okay. But check with the lawyer. I am not a lawyer, so I cannot give.
Like that, you're going to see a lot of people walking around.
Yeah, you're going to have a lot of people in the background, and especially when there's kids and things like that, you need to be a little bit careful. So you probably want to ask a lawyer about that. I mean, 9 times out of 10, you're fine, right? I mean, it's just never going to even come up. But I am not a lawyer, so please ask a lawyer. I got to be very clear about that. Yeah.
Busey has a really strong policy that we're not allowed to put anyone on social media, anything so that outside of even our internal, unless they sign a release. I was at Buffalo Wild Wings during the March Madness, and they had a sign up that said, "Walking into this establishment is your consent to be on video."
Mm-hmm.
So I would always be cautious and make sure you're at least letting people know.
Yeah, and most public places have some sort of disclaimer like that. I need to look into that a little bit more to be 100% confident on it. But most of what we've done, we haven't had any problems with, or actually everything we've done, we've not had any problems with yet. But it could always happen. All right, so what to do with these videos, right? So I want to kind of briefly go through a couple options that you have. The first thing you definitely want to do is you want to make sure that you post it on your business page first. And this is one where you'll hear different opinions on this, but I'll explain kind of my theory and you can decide for yourself. So the reason that I always post any of the stuff I want to share on my business page first is that if you post something on your personal profile, you cannot track hardly any statistics around that post. So especially video, there are a lot of stats, like the one I showed you earlier, that how much time has the video been watched total. You cannot get that statistic if you post something directly to your personal page. If you post it on your business page first, and then you hit the share button and you share it to your personal page, it will track all the stats from both places. So I post on my business page and it gets 50 views there, and then I share it to my personal page and it gets another 50 views. It'll have 100 total views and it'll tell me how much total time the video was watched. And that is very useful. That's just one of the many things you'll get out of having it posted to the business page first. Another one is that you can create lists of people based on how much of the video they watch. So if you think about especially educational videos, if I make a 3-minute video about down payment assistance for a mortgage, if somebody watched all 3 minutes of that, that's a good indicator that they have that need, that they're curious about that process, and I want to make sure I continue showing stuff to that person. If somebody else didn't even watch it, or they only watched 3 seconds and they moved on, they didn't stick with it, they're probably not as interested. That's not a topic that I want to continue to show to them, right? So if you posted it on your business page first, and then you shared it to your personal page, and you realize, oh man, there's 10 people in there that I'm connected to that watched that whole video. There's a couple people in that 10 that are probably in need of some help right now. I want to make sure I have them on a separate list and I continue to advertise to them, right? So those are just a couple examples. There are other reasons, but those, in my opinion, are kind of the 2 big ones. And so I really recommend posting to the business page first and then to your personal page. Experiment with it, kind of figure out what makes sense for you, but other people, they have their own opinions there. Another thing you can do, which is nice, is you can add captions to your video through your business page. Those can be automatically generated. So there's a feature where if you upload the video, you can click a button that says auto generate, and all of the stuff you said in that video will create captions and put them at the bottom of the video. So does anybody know why that might be important to have captions on the video?
If they're searching.
So if they're searching for it, so it makes it a little more searchable because there's text attached to it.
You're actually seeing it while you're hearing it, so it stays with you better.
Okay, so it's a good answer too, but the truth is, because a lot of people watch video without the sound on, right? So a lot of people actually, the video's auto playing and the sound never turns on. So if they don't have the sound on, and this is when they're, like somebody in here is probably watching a video on their phone right now and the sound's not on, right? So, no, you're all very attentive. But anyway, it's the kind of situation where, like, if they're on a bus or if they're, there's a lot of times where we're actually on Facebook, but we don't want to have the sound playing on our phone. And so it's something like 50% of videos still are watched without the sound on. So that's kind of the main reason. There's other reasons for captions, but that really helps, is if there's captions that they can read when they watch the video. The captions are not perfect. It guesses, so it doesn't always get the words right. So you do have to edit them. But if you have a video that's under, I think, 3 minutes, Facebook will also, they have people that they pay to go back and review those for us. So you got to give them 24 hours. It's not an instantaneous thing, but they will go back and edit them for you if you don't feel like doing it. Do you have a question? Yeah.
Yes, so what were you saying to do to make this happen?
So if you upload the video, once you upload it, it's going to give you some, it's going to ask you for a title for it, a couple other things. I don't have a slide for that. We'll show that at a later date when we're talking about the ads part of things. But one of them will say captions. There's just a section in the tab in there that will say captions. Click that and it'll give you a generate captions button to push. Okay. And that'll generate those for you. Okay, and then another thing you can do with video on social media is live video. So has anybody done a live video yet on Instagram or Facebook? Okay, got a couple, that's good. So live video is one of those things where as a tool, it came out, I think it was almost 4 or 5 years ago, and it was a big rage, everybody's excited about it, all these movie stars and stuff were using it a lot, and then it kind of died, and everybody was kind of confused about that. And in my opinion, the reason is that it's just something that we're still figuring out how to use, right? So live video, if you think about it, it's a pretty amazing thing. There's actually again, Gary Vee has somebody following him with a camera, so he catches all the stuff. But he had a situation where he was walking through a hallway at an event, and this woman had I have actually one of these microphones with me right now, so she had one of these. So it's just a microphone that you can plug directly into your phone. It's got a cord in the bag. And she had one of these plugged into a phone, had a little light clipped onto the top of it, and she was talking while somebody was filming her. And she kind of stopped him. She's like, oh, hey, Gary, we're live right now. Can you tell us a little bit about the conference? And she did like a 2-minute little interview, and then he's like, oh, cool, and he walked away. And then he was making the point after that of like, everything that just happened there required a truck with a satellite on it sitting outside like just 5 years ago, right? So you had to have a van outside in the parking lot with a 30-foot tall satellite tower on it, guy with a big shoulder camera to do any of that, right? Now, is that picture as clear as local TV? Of course it's not, but it's a million times easier to do now. And I think that that's where live video it's just been such a big jump that people are still figuring it out, right? So there are situations though First of all, there's reasons to use live video. One of the big ones is that it sends a note, say Facebook sends a notification to a lot of your friends and your followers when you go live. So it's an easy way to send a notification to people. Other videos don't do that, right? They're just going to show up normally in your news feed. But Facebook will actually pop up something that says, hey, Nick's going live right now. Do you want to watch it? So that's really powerful. That's a good way to get in front of people. The other thing is that people can interact with you while you're live, okay? And I think that's where this becomes so powerful, is that if I'm on camera and someone can ask a question and I can answer it while I'm still on camera, that's much more interactive, it's much more engaged than a traditional video. And everything Facebook is working on right now is trying to get people to engage more with each other. So that's, we're not going to get into the algorithm update that happened a couple months ago that much, but that was the big thing they focused on, was how can we get people interacting with their family and friends more? And live video does a better job of that than traditional video, because I can actually get on and comment. And when it really gets powerful is when you have people that know each other that are both watching the video, and they'll start talking to each other in the comments. So that's a pretty cool thing, and that can only happen with live video. So a couple ideas of what you can do with this. I mean, live video at events is very good. You want to think in terms of like, what's something that's timely. If it's something that I could just record normally and it's no big deal if somebody sees it 2 weeks from now, then it doesn't necessarily need a live video. But things like, so that's why sporting events, if you think about traditional TV, one of the remaining ad revenue platforms is sporting events, because they're live, right? I don't want to watch the Cardinals game 3 days after it happens, because I'm going to know what the score was by then, right? It's kind of hard to avoid that stuff. So watching it live is still important. So things like events, that's a big one. If you can do live at an event, that can be really good. Sporting events, things like concerts, if you can go live at a concert, you usually get a lot of views on that. So just kind of thinking in those terms. And again, this is still really kind of new, still cutting edge. So I really think people are still coming up with ideas for this. But one of the things you have to remember is one of the reasons we like live television is you don't know what's going to happen, right? So things can go wrong, and they do. And we do a lot of live videos ourselves. We actually have 2 different weekly live shows that I do every week. So one of them is called the Bourbon Friday Show. So if you're looking for an example of somewhat cutting edge version of how you can do this stuff, that's a good one. We had a really fun episode last week where we had a probably 70-something-year-old founder of a distillery from New Florence, Missouri. His name is Gary Heingardner. Came on the show, and he's a very fascinating guy. He makes his own hats out of wood. So he actually puts these big chunks of wood on a turn, and he carves these hats out of them all out of one piece of wood. So very interesting guy, very cool company, and we did a bourbon tasting on the show. It was a lot of fun. So that was kind of an example of what you can do. I also do a show after my networking meeting every Thursday morning. So I'm in a BNI chapter. We go live after the meeting, and we talk to the person who gave a presentation that day. We talk to the president a little bit. Usually that one's less than 10 minutes long, right? So that's another thing about live, is that people watch live videos on average 3 times as long as they watch a pre-recorded video. So if they would have watched it for 10 seconds on a pre-recorded video, they'll watch it for 30 seconds. If it would have been a minute, they'll watch 3 minutes, right? So keep that in mind. That's also a very powerful tool.
Excuse me.
Mm-hmm.
Dumb question. Live video, does it get saved?
It's not a dumb question. That's a good question. It does, yes. And you can actually choose if you want it to or not. So you do the live video. While it's live, people can tune in and watch it. When it ends, it then takes that video and it processes it into a recorded video, and then it posts it for you, okay? If you don't want it to be saved, there is an option to not have it save afterwards.
If it was that bad.
Well, yeah, if it was bad, or I mean, and that's where the stuff can get kind of creative. Is like if you want to do like an exclusive giveaway that only happens at 2:00 on Tuesday, and you got to tune into the live. That's where I think we're kind of not thinking hard enough about how you can use these things yet. Is like, yeah, I mean, you can build urgency around some of these live shows. So you might want to say, hey, it's only going to be live, and then it goes away after that. I mean, that's actually a Snapchat built an entire company around the idea of disappearing posts, right? Because it was there for 24 hours, and it gives you the sense of urgency. If somebody sends you a snap, you got to get on and see it before it disappears, right? That was how they built their entire business. So I think that is something that people, most of them are saving everything they do live, and we generally save, we get a lot of our views after the show was up, But there are some interesting things you could do by not saving it and telling people like, hey, if you're not on it when I go live, you don't get to see what's there, or you don't get to hear about the special giveaway or whatever you're doing. So there's some interesting options there.
And you can download it too and put it up on YouTube or send it in an email, so there's all types of options. It is an actual saved video.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
One thing, don't delete it too soon. I had one that I was videoing doing a walkthrough in a house, just part of it so that they, like you want to see the rest of the house, yada, yada, yada.
Sure.
Well, when I did it, I walked past this big mirror and I'm like, oh, yikes, I didn't mean to get me in the video. And I said that. And I thought, oh, I'm going to delete this thing. And I thought, no, I'll just put it out there. And people thought it was so funny.
Oh, I'm
Because
sure,
I reacted like ridiculous, but and I wanted to delete it right away.
Yeah. But that's a good point, right? Is that's the stuff people want to see, right? I mean, it's like you want to be polished, and that's great, but like what people want to see is like the behind the mistakes, right? I mean, that's kind of the thing with live videos. Anything can happen. You never know what's going to happen, right? People fall down the stairs and all kinds of crazy stuff, and hopefully that doesn't happen to you. But, so yeah, that just keep that in mind is like a lot of the stuff that you feel might be kind of embarrassing or a little awkward. I mean, that's what makes something go viral. I mean, people love that kind of stuff. So I'm not surprised that was the part they liked.
Yeah, I was going to say, when the very first live video I did too, it was so funny because I saw people getting on and I got really emotional. I started crying. I'm like, oh my gosh, what am I going to do? And I composed myself. I don't even know how many, I had over 1,000 views within a day or so. It was like, oh my gosh, so they like the live, real you stuff.
Yeah, I mean, if you think about what, anything you do, like if you do public speaking, you do video, you put yourself out there in any way, everybody's always kind of putting on their public face, so to speak, right? You're kind of putting your mask on and trying to look as professional as you can, but everybody's not really that person, Behind the scenes, we make mistakes, we're clumsy, we do dumb things. She can vouch for that. I'm definitely clumsy behind the scenes, right? But it's one of those things where, like, that's what makes us real, and that's what, social media for so long has been kind of just that fake public face that we all put on, right? It's been kind of the way we like to act when we're out about town, so to speak. And so now we're starting to see people be a little bit more vulnerable and put stuff out there that is a little bit more realistic to who they are, and the response to it is incredible, right? Because it feels real, I feel like I'm actually getting to know that person. I do think that's one of the things that live video is allowing us to do, because it's more messy and there's really, you can prepare all you want and then you go live and your microphone's not working and you got to scramble to fix it, and that's happened to me. There's things that's just life, right? But people get that. They understand life is messy, things go wrong, and I like to know that it happens to other people. Because actually social media has in a lot of ways caused a lot of depression for being the other way around, where it's like, well, if I only ever post, like I was in Florida and then Colorado, and that's obviously a lot of fun. If I only ever post stuff about that, and I don't post about my day-to-day struggles and how crappy the other weeks of my life can be, well, then people they get jealous and they feel bad, and I didn't get to go on that vacation, and now I feel like I missed out on something, and so for a long time, like, social media has had kind of that negative impact on a lot of people, and so I'm hoping, and Facebook is finally admitting that, like, they actually lost a lot of money when they said, hey, we're going to make our platform more about people interacting with each other and less about just spending as much time as they can on Facebook. The time spent on Facebook actually went down significantly after that, and they said, hey, we wanted that. That was kind of the entire point of making that change. So they sacrificed a lot of money, finally. It took them 14 years to do it, but they made their $500 billion first, and then they sacrificed $30 billion. But they did make a change, and so now I think you're going to start to see more of that, and I think live video does play really well into that kind of vulnerable, true behind-the-scenes kind of thing. So, yeah, I'm curious to see what people continue to do with it, because, we're doing kind of our show, but I think there's a lot of other ideas you could try as well. Okay, well, this is like freezing up on me. There we go. Okay, so we're going to get wrapped up here in a minute. I want to make sure we have enough time for questions, but I just want to tell you really quickly 2 other places that you can use your video other than just posting it on your page or posting it on YouTube. And the first would be to run Facebook ads. So we are going to be doing a lot of training on how to run Facebook ads. That is not what we're getting into today. It'll be one of the later trainings, but I did want to mention this. This, to me, is a much bigger opportunity than simply making video and posting it on your page. Because this is how you get your video in front of your competitors' friends and family. Okay, so if you want to be the one that's out there, getting in front of other people's spheres of influence and getting the leads that they think they're going to get, this is what you can use to do that. Not that it has to be that cutthroat, obviously, right? But the idea is you can target anybody you want on Facebook with your video ads. So especially those things like testimonial videos, the educational stuff, you can go on and say, hey, who do I really like? I want to first of all make sure my sphere of influence sees these. You can upload a list of people's emails and phone numbers and target them. So if you have your sphere of influence in a database, a CRM, you can download that, upload it to Facebook, and make sure that they see all of your stuff, right? If you just post it organically, you don't know who's going to see it and who isn't, because Facebook's in control of that. So this is a great way to make sure your sphere sees it. You can also target ideal prospects. So for instance, if hey, I really like working with young families, so families that have kids that are under the age of 3 and they're outgrowing their home and they need a bigger house, that is literally a category of people you can target on Facebook, right? So you can target homeowners who have kids under the age of 3. There's all kinds have an interest in certain things. You can get really, really specific. So that's why I love Facebook ads. They're very powerful. You can also do a lot of lead gen on there. And then the second thing I would do, and I've mentioned, I know both of these already in the presentation, but the second thing is to use video and email. So one platform that you could try out is called BombBomb. I know it's pretty popular in the real estate industry already. But BombBomb actually allows you to sort of embed an email or video in the email. What it does is it creates a little GIF out of the first few seconds of the video, and that will autoplay in the email, which is kind of cool. And if they click it, it'll very quickly open up the video on a different web page, right? If you try to directly embed the video in the email, it makes the email way too big, and a lot of email inboxes will actually block it, right? So that's why BombBomb is kind of a cool tool there. Yeah.
Can you target with that clip section in case you look like a complete moron in that first 3 seconds?
I don't actually use BombBomb myself yet, so I'm not entirely sure on that. But there's a lot of settings you can control in terms of how it looks. And it's also one of those things where BombBomb in particular is set up so that you can just click record on your computer and it'll just start recording, and then you can do a little bit of basic editing in the service and then send the email. So this is where you can get into one-on-one email. So you can actually record a little, like let's say you have a list of birthdays and you got 3 people whose birthday is today. You can go on, click record, hey, happy birthday, Sue, and then send that to Sue, and then, hey, happy birthday, Mark, make a different one for him and send it to him. So that's where it's kind of most powerful, I think, that particular service. All right, and then I guess I want to get into questions, because that's something we've kind of had not much of a chance for in the past couple weeks. So we do have 5 minutes left. I will hang around for a little while after that as well, but what kind of questions can we answer?
You seem to say that, like, if I were to make a video of what we're doing here right now, and then try to post it to an email, that would not work without BombBomb? Did I hear that right?
There are multiple ways to put video into email. It's very hard. There's not many services that will allow you to put the video into the email itself. I mean, you can attach it. You can attach. Obviously, you can use Gmail to attach it. The problem is if you send that to a list. If you send it to one person, it's probably not a big deal. And we're not getting into email rules today, but the way an email server works is if I send an email to, let's say, 100 people on a list,
right,
and each email has like 100 megabyte video file attached to it, most of the inboxes that receive that are going to say, whoa, this looks like it might be a virus or something. There's a big file, because they can't even scan files above 25 megabytes in a lot of cases. So it can't even scan it, right? So a lot of times if you do that, if it's an email list, it'll just block it.
Because it's one-on-one.
If it's one-on-one, you can probably just attach it, right? Again, though, BombBomb is not attaching it. It's making a short GIF, which is more of an image file, and then it's linking to it. So it's not, the email's much smaller, is basically what's happening.
The reason my question is, if I'm using the BombBomb, do I, when the email, when you have an attachment, you get like that little thing up in the connection part of the email. Are you getting like a picture of like what the video might look like on the first part of within the email when you see the email open? Do you see like a TV screen theoretically? You
see a sample of it. So you see what's called a GIF. So it's basically like it's basically like 20 images that play back to back. So it's not like a video. It skips a little bit, but it gives them an idea of what's in the video. It just makes them more likely to click on it. This is stuff they've studied and kind of the way they decided to do it. So that's why they do it that way. But you can also, one thing I've seen as well is like just have a picture with the play button on it.
That's what I'm getting.
And then that takes them to the video somewhere else. You can do that too.
I see. Okay.
Yep.
Does Facebook, you know, when you see the live videos, and there's a lot of times I'll see somebody doing the video and they'll say, okay, I'm waiting for, see who's all on and see if the likes and the hearts and the, and you know, the emojis. Does Facebook, are they using that when there's no interaction from the audience versus a lot of interaction? Is that video automatically going up the list?
Yeah, I mean,
so
so
to speak?
it's not entirely clear, and I don't know that anybody knows yet with live video what all those interactions necessarily do. But it's always better to have interactions than to not have them, right? So yes, it is any of that kind of stuff. If people are liking, if they're commenting, that is going to help your video reach more people. So the more that you can encourage, so like you'll see that people that know what they're doing with this stuff, they are going to be asking. You know, that's why like a Q&A style video is usually very effective, because you say, hey, I'm here. People will do what are called AMAs online, which stands for Ask Me Anything. And it's basically, so, you know, these are usually famous people, right? So they have a decent audience. They'll get 50 or 100 people watching their video. So there's enough people to ask questions. If there's only 2 people, you know, you should probably have some questions written down that you can answer, you know, so you don't have to rely on them. But that can be a good way to get conversation started. And a rule of thumb on Facebook is if you can get people to have a conversation, if you can get back and forth started, that is going to help your post do much, much better. So anytime you can simulate that, that's a good thing.
So if you have a Facebook business page and you have a regular page and you want to go live and you have more friends on your personal page than your business page, do you see where I'm going with this?
Yeah.
What do you think would be better as far as where to go live at?
So, you know, live video, that's one where it might make sense to do it more on your personal page. I mean, if you have somebody that's helping you, I mean, that's one of the challenges is like live video is something where you almost need a second person involved, because especially if you're using the screen on the back of the phone, or sorry, the camera on the back of the phone versus the selfie camera, it's a much better camera, so you want to use that if you can, but then you can't see what people are saying to you, right? So you almost want a second person. Now, if you have a second person helping you, then you could share it on your business page, and then they can go to your page and click share from there to your personal page for you. But if it's just you and you don't have access to any of that help, it might make sense just to go straight to the personal page. At least that way you're getting the largest possible audience. And you can also share those things after the fact too. So, right, if you go live on your personal page and you make it public, you could click the share button and share that to the business page.
And so if you have your business page set to public, would there be more people that could view it right off the bat other than just people that have liked your page?
Well, so when anything's shared publicly, Facebook still shows it to your followers first, right?
Okay.
And it's going to use what they do to decide how many other people to show it to. So if it shows it to a few of your followers and they all start watching it and they're commenting and liking it and it looks exciting, then it might start showing it to strangers, right? But that's all dependent on what happens, right? So you always want to make sure things are set to public when you share them, because it makes that possible. That's how you kind of get in front of a new audience for free. But just because it's set to public doesn't mean it's going to show it to anybody extra, right?
Well, when you have it set to public and you're on your timeline, then and it goes to your followers, people who've liked you, don't their followers see it too then? Doesn't it go to theirs or no?
Nothing's automatic. So it's all basically the Facebook algorithm its objective is to make sure that you see only stuff that you're going to want to see. Okay? So that's really, it's not about the followers. It's about so Facebook's basically saying, I want to make sure that if you see something, you don't go, oh, why is this in my newsfeed, right? They want you to go, oh, that's a cool article. Maybe you don't have time to read it, but you want to have this sense of like everything here is kind of hand-picked for me. So the way it does that is it looks at, you share something, and it makes a guess. It says, hey, who do I think out of your followers first, so whoever likes your page, who do I think is going to enjoy seeing this content? So let's say you made a video of an open house. So it's probably going to look at who's been looking at similar things recently. So who's looking at other open house videos, or who's looking at Zillow or whatever. And it's going to show it to them first, and then whatever they do tells Facebook more about the video. So if they like it and they engage with it, and it's going to read their comments, it's going to look at everything they do, and then it's going to use that information to then decide what to do next. So it's kind of a domino effect. So there's actually people out there that will get some of their friends to go on and like and comment on their stuff as soon as they post it, and that does actually kind of trick the system into showing it to more people. You know, I'm not a big fan of that kind of stuff because just because you trick the system doesn't mean the post is any good. So sometimes it kind of backfires on you, but that's how it works. So if they get on and they like it, and it does well with them, and then it shows it to more people who like your page, if all those people keep liking it and they keep commenting on it and it keeps doing well, then it will start showing it to random people. And those random people are going to be picked based on, again, Facebook deciding if they think they'll like it. So sometimes they will be friends of people who have liked your page, sometimes they'll be total strangers, right? And that's where, if you do a good enough job, that can be very powerful, because Facebook might say, oh, all these people who have been looking at Zillow.com have been liking this video, and now it's going to, for free, start showing it to more people that are looking at Zillow. Those are probably people that are looking for a home, right? So unfortunately, it's just kind of like Google, where it's like we have guesses as to how it works, but they don't publish our algorithm, right? So nobody's ever been able to go in and say, oh, if you do this, that'll happen. And that's the thing, right? Is if they did that, then everybody would cheat the system, and they'd have all these ways of getting around it. So the rule of thumb is just make stuff that you think the people that follow your page are going to enjoy, and if you do a good enough job and you learn how to be good on camera and all that kind of stuff, then it'll start spreading to other people. So it's not the most straightforward answer, unfortunately, but that's kind of just how it is. All right, so I know we're 5 past, so I think we should probably go ahead and wrap up. If anybody has any other questions, feel free to stick around for a couple minutes. I'll stay up at the front to answer them. And I think everybody has a handout, too, about the next event, so make sure you take a copy of that.
Thank you.
Thank you.